Bunyan, axe murderer. This is the story of the lumberjack, the giant of the woods, a man infamous for his heinous crimes, a story ridden with abuse and death. This is the terrible story of Paul Bunyan. Blood dripped from the tip of his axe. The deep crimson liquid ran down the blade and drizzled down the handle, coating his hands until they were hot and sticky. He could feel the adrenaline pumping through his massive arms. He could hear the whispers of the bull in his ear. Good job. Now do it again. Paul Bunyan was born in a small cottage in northern Maine. He was born to Martha and Curtis Bunyan on an unknown date in the year 1976. They had 12 boys and 3 girls. Their son Paul, however, was unique. He was born with giantism, an extremely rare genetic condition caused by a tumor in his brain. This caused him to grow upwards of 6 feet by age 10. Unfortunately, the tumor in Paul's head caused severe damage to his developmental abilities. Bunyan was diagnosed with mental retardation by the small town's doctor and actively shunned by the community and even his family. Bunyan's family was extremely abusive to the child, as he had destroyed their reputation in town. They forced the child to work constantly. His increased size and strength allowed for manual labor, and his undeveloped brain meant he was good for little other than that. Bunyan was forced to chop wood for hours every day, only allotting time to sleep and 30 minutes a day to watch his favorite program, Babe, the Magic Blue Bull. He chopped enough wood for his family to potentially make a great living off of it. Unfortunately, no locals would purchase wood chopped by the giant of the woods. They told stories in town of the giant boy who was used wagon wheels as buttons and drank lakes, causing drought. They said he was as dumb as the rocks, but as strong as an ox. Mental health and genetic diseases were not commonly understood at the time, and especially not by poor, educated hillbillies. The family was forever stuck in conditions of squalor and poverty. Beatings by the older children onto Paul were encouraged by their deranged parents. Bunyan's only solace for his undeveloped mind was his axe and the happy blue bull. At age 15, a group of local bullies heard about the giant. They came to see him for themselves. They threw stones at him and sticks, hurled insults at him, attacking his size and his mental capacity. Bunyan would run away, encouraging the children to continue. Now that his time in the woods was disrupted, he drew further and further and further into the bull. He started to see the bull in his dreams, and slowly the line between dreams and reality blurred. The bull spoke to him during the day, whispers escalating into screams. The bull was becoming more fact than fiction in this childlike mind. The bull twisted from his happy television persona into the crazed psyche of Bunyan's deepest mind. The bull egged Bunyan on, manipulating the child's emotions. One day when the boys returned from the wood, to the woods, they were bold. They no longer were fearful of the giant. They came right up to him, hurling insults and beating on him. The bull's whispers told him to lash out, and he listened. He swung his woodcutter's axe in anger and heard a wet thud as his axe split open the bully's head. The others stood around Bunyan, shocked and paralyzed, as they stood looking at the split in the boy's forehead. The whispers in Bunyan's head condensed into one clear voice. Leave no witnesses. He lifted the axe, leaving the bully to hit the ground with a thump. This snapped the other boys into action. They had seen the face of the giant as he stood in front of their slaughtered friend, the expression switching from shock to pain to a sick expression of twisted satisfaction. They knew that they were next and ran for their lives to no use. Bunyan's stride was too great and axe too deadly. He killed the remaining 3 boys with his axe under the encouragement of the bull's whispered praise. Bunyan then went on to continue his atrocities, proving an aptitude for murder. He then killed his abusive family and siblings, leaving the woods for his property bloody and empty. The massive killer continued his rampage in the woods for years after this, leaving blood and stumps in his wake. As he traveled across the North Woods, tales arose of his misdeeds. Campfire stories about the giant of the woods, the man who could fell a tree in a single blow, the killer who towered above his victims. On July 7, 1998, Bunyan was apprehended by New Hampshire authorities and taken to a maximum security prison. A therapist was brought in to determine Bunyan's mental state. The following details that visit. The following are the official notes from Paul Bunyan's psychoanalysis conducted by Dr. Morrison, M.D. Paul, may I call you Paul? Bunyan silently stared at the wall. Or would you rather me called the lumberjack? That's what the people have been calling you here. Paul, you've been arrested on multiple counts of murder. If you were not aware, the state of New Hampshire uses the death penalty. I did nothing wrong. Morrison stared at Bunyan, signaling for him to continue to no avail. Well, Paul, you were caught at the scene of the last murders, covered in blood. We've also been able to connect you to multiple other murders over the years, including those of your family. In the eyes of the law, that is considered wrong. Bunyan seemed to ponder what he had said. They had to die. Morrison was beginning to heat up. How could he have absolutely no remorse? You're saying that women and children deserve to die, you sick bastard? Bunyan grinned. They were chosen by the bull. He selected them and I followed his commands. They were not needed in his plan. Now this interview is over. He said I can't say any more. Bunyan refused to answer any further questions and stared at the wall until he was returned to his cell. Paul Bunyan was sentenced to death by the state of New Hampshire and died on December 6, 1998 by electric chair. He was shocked 14 times before he deceased. His final words were chilling. Fear the bull's breath. When interviewed by the press, Dr. Morrison had this to say. Bunyan was terribly treated, of which resulted in the death of many innocents and the creation of a madman. His mental health and differences drove people to fear him, hence turning him into a creature to be rightfully feared. Bunyan was both a victim and an example of society's greatest ills. That concludes the terrible story of axe murderer Paul Bunyan.